Hi and welcome to another Today It video. I'm Dave. What we're covering this week is cheating, digital doping, or whatever you want to call it on Zwift, how people do it, how to combat it, how to recognise it. Now, first of all, we've started doing podcasts on a new app called Stereo. We'll put a link below to the first one we've done. Please tune in. If you want to be a guest on it, if you've got something to contribute, let me know. The more the merrier. We'll start doing it probably every Saturday morning. Anyway, more on that later. Link below on that one. So what happened when Zwift was created? What we had is a game for cycling indoors. So we had cyclists and everything that goes on with cyclists and the type of chemical doping that is done in cycling in some very small part of the sport. And then also you've got gaming where people created cracks and cheats to get through all the levels and to get all the power-ups and all the different sorts of stuff you get in normal gaming. Those two worlds collided, and when those two worlds collided, what we got is we got a different type of cheating. So cheating, I think in Zwift we can break down into some broad areas. So the first one we'll look at is height and weight, and then the second one we'll look at is data, and the third one is not really cheating but it sort of is, which is sandbagging and some of the digital stuff that goes on around there. So if we look at height and weight, what you can do on Zwift is you can put in an accurate weight in. And you put that inaccurate weight in, that increases your power to watts per kilogram. Therefore, you look faster, you are faster in game, you can climb quicker, all that sort of stuff. You're more competitive in races, and you can do group rides at an easier pace than what you would in reality. So that seems pretty crazy. But some people look at it and they go, well, it's just a game. You know, I'm just chasing pixels. It's not real. It's not real life. I'm not out on the road. I'm not in a real road race. I haven't paid entry fee to a race. This is a digital version of me, and I'm just having fun indoors to break the boredom. And that's what some people think. And what they go, right at the start of Zwift, a pretty serious racer said to me, "It was great, isn't it? I can pop the sort of dimensions of Chris Froome in and go up, you know, a mountain, and just to see how I can perform if I was Chris Froome's height and weight." And for a lot of people, that's not the point. For a lot of us, we believe if you're on Zwift, you put in your correct height and weight. So not only does your weight affect Zwift, but your height affects Zwift as well, because it affects the aerodynamics. Now, how do you get over that? Now, the Facebook pages like Zwift Transparency, where people are really serious about racing, put themselves on there and they show themselves doing weigh-ins and they measure themselves and all that sort of stuff. Now, the real devious people, of course, can get around that. How would you get around it? Well, across all your different cycling apps, you make sure your weight's the same, because people will catch you out because one's different to the other. Some people have even videoed themselves doing weigh-ins, and even with things like withing scales, because of course scales can be miscalibrated, and you can have scales you stand on that show that you're not the weight you really are. You can put some soft material, you cut out a piece of very soft carpet, some shag pile, you can put that underneath your scales and you can weigh yourself and it looks like you're lighter than you are. And I've even heard at the very highest level that people have weighed in with a video of the feet showing the weigh-in, but what they've really been doing is holding a bar above the heads to take some weight off the feet. The most competitive people are going to be competitive not just in sheer performance, but in any way. That happens in all forms of life. We know business, sport, everything. So if people are going to cheat, they're going to cheat. So people are trying their best to get transparency from the basic to the highest level, but of course they're going to mess about with stuff. So as far as weight's concerned, you know, we've got to weigh ourselves on accurate scales and all that sort of stuff, but if people are going to be devious, they're going to be devious. So somebody could go into Zwift, they could alter the height, all that sort of stuff. So they can mess with that bit. So that's the height and weight aspect. The other aspect is the digital aspect, so that is measuring your power. Now, to make Zwift accessible to people, bear in mind this is like 6 years ago, lots of people didn't have smart trainers then. Smart trainers are quite a new thing, so what you could do is you could get a normal A-frame turbo trainer, you could put a cadence and speed sensor on, And what Zwift does, as you know, you can find the model closest to your turbo trainer, he says, because that's the top right when you log into Zwift. And you can select the model, and then what Zwift will do is mirror as close as possible to the power output it thinks, using some clever algorithm, you would really be putting out. It's never really accurate. It's called Zwift power, or Z power, sorry, shouldn't confuse the two. So it's called Z power, and what it does is just gives you an example. So what you can always tell those people, because they're usually very fast, usually putting out high watts per kilogram, and what you usually see is at the side of their watts per kilogram there isn't a lightning flash to show it's Z power. Now if those people are racing, in the official rates and the official results on Zwift power, what that does is it eliminates those people from the race. They're disqualified. So even though you might be competing with them, even though they might be messing up with the race and disrupting the blob and breaking away and doing all sorts of things, you can largely ignore them because they won't appear in the results. The other thing that people can do is, for example, in the basic wheel-on entry-level smart trainers, don't kid yourself. For example, the Tax Vortex, they are never that accurate, particularly the higher the wattage you go. They have a huge amount of variation. Yes, you can calibrate them, but even calibrated, they're not that brilliant. Then again, they can be manipulated again. So number one, they're not that accurate, so the data you see isn't brilliant. Number two, what people can do is after calibrating them, they can let the tyre pressure down. That pushes the watts up. Or they could smear some Vaseline over the sensor, for example, could push the watts up again. So they could say, oh yeah, I'm on a smart trainer, look at that on Zwift power, I'm on a smart trainer, absolutely great. However, it's not that accurate. You sometimes can tell, as if you know somebody's maximum heart rate, you can tell by the heart rate, because if the heart rate is particularly low and the power is particularly high, they're either superhuman or isn't something quite right. But be careful of that, because a lot of us have got a maximum heart rate of, let's say, 170, and you know, so therefore if you're pushing 160, 165, you're really trying. Somebody who's got a heart rate of 210, 165 isn't that hard for them. It's enough, but it isn't that hard. So obviously let's put that into context. Even the most accurate smart trainers, so let's say we see a mid-range smart trainer is accurate up to 2%. What does that mean? It means 2% of the factory calibrated wattage. So they can go up to 2% out. If you've got a calibratable power meter, smart trainer, you should calibrate it. And remember to warm up for about 10 minutes before you do so. So you warm up 10 minutes, calibrate your machine, then you're good to go on in races, group rides, all that sort of stuff. Now what would happen if you didn't calibrate? Well, the thing is going to move out, and if it moves out by 2%, let's say that's even if calibrated, moves out by 2%. If you're, let's say, doing a 1,000 watt sprint, that's another 20 watts on top. So, you know, they're good, but let's bear in mind they're not super good. You're not going to ride all day to 1,000 watts, but you know, there is a little bit of variation. If you've got a turbo trainer, it goes out by 1%, that's pretty good. But bearing in mind, they're all within a percentage of the factory power. If you're racing at the highest level, you are required to use dual power, dual methods of power. So for example, you've got power pedals on or a power meter on your bike and using a smart trainer. That is great, but devious people again can miscalibrate both machines, and they can miscalibrate them in a way that they both read high and track in the same way. So that can be even done. Not saying it's done a lot, but it can be done. And even the worst method of digital doping is by using a simulation. It's usually done through AMP+, but literally somebody who doesn't cycle at all, who knows what they're doing, can throw up a simulation. They can digitally create a heart rate monitor, they can digitally create cadence sensor, and they can digitally create a power meter. All they need to do is create a profile on Zwift, put some height and weight in that looks pretty competitive, and they can sit there live messing about and creating, just basically playing gaming, cycling, sitting there in their armchair having good fun racing against you. It will look absolutely accurate if the person knows what they're doing, and bearing in mind these people are pretty bright anyway. What they're getting out of it, they're not burning many calories, but you know, they're getting some sort of fun, but it's not really what we want. So that's what you can do. So you've got the height and weight, you've got the digital aspect, and then there's another way in which you can manipulate your data. So you could have an accurate power meter, you could have an accurate smart trainer. You're broadcasting to Zwift on AMP Plus, and you do something called the AMP Plus cheat, which what you do is you do a mini sprint, come off the power, mini sprint, come off the power, keep repeating that. The power smoothing and the way in which the machine transmits the data looks like the peak power all the time. So let's say you're hitting 400 watts coming off, going up to 400 watts coming off. It will look like you're putting out a constant 400 watts. The community is working against that, Zwift are working against that now, but people still try that on, and look out for that one. Can't do it on Bluetooth, and usually connecting by Bluetooth, my experience is always seems to be far more accurate than when you connect by AMP Plus. But it's just an interesting one, my view only, but you know, always be cautious if you see somebody putting out big numbers and all they ever do is connect by AMP Plus. The last thing is the gaming of sandbagging, which is, I say it's not cheating, but you could have accurate weight, you could have accurate height, and you could have accurate power. But what you decide is you don't want to be an B or an A racer. You really like, let's say, being in C, and you really like winning races or being in the top 3. So what you do is you always make sure that your power to weight in a race doesn't get you DQ'd or promoted on Zwift Power, but what it does, it puts you in that top level. Because obviously if you get promoted, you might be in the back end of, let's say, B, and you don't want to do that. Now for some people, they're saying, well, that's all I want to do, I really get fun doing that, that really motivates me. For a lot of people who are seriously racing in there, desperately trying to get promoted and get into B and progress forwards, they find it really frustrating. So just bear in mind about that one, just have a think about that one. Is it really ethical, or is it just have a bit of fun and B? I know some people, what they just do is they just go in races wherever and start late and try and make their way through the field, because at the end of the day, at some point we've got to go outside and we've got to ride with other riders, and it's a bit embarrassing where you look absolutely amazing on Zwift and then you go out with normal riders, let's say in a club run, and you get dropped when you hit the first hill. Everybody will notice it, everybody will know, and it's all a bit strange. And another last one as well, you know, if you are going to cheat and you're going to put yourself down as 51 kilograms, seems like a lot of people seem to be that way, you're going to be 51 kilogram, people are going to look at your Facebook profile picture, and if your Facebook profile picture isn't of a 51 kilogram person, people are going to spot it quite quickly. So I say we don't really want cheaters, and I know a lot of people have got different views of this, and there's lots of different tribes, but it would be great if people were using power within what they can afford, as accurate as possible. It would be great if people weigh themselves regularly, it would be great if people put the right height in, and it would be great if people just tried to be as accurate as possible. And let's just kill this cheating and get rid of it, because it's quite ridiculous. So thanks for watching. What are your thoughts? Really pleased to know your thoughts below. How can we combat it more? Are there any platforms you're using that aren't Zwift at the moment? They've got a different way of dealing with digital doping and cheating and stuff like that. We are hearing reports as well. I know there was a BBC reporter that was working on looking at Zwift and Zwift racing, and thought it was absolutely terrific. We had reports of people doing all sorts of things like rubbing bicarbonate of soda in the legs and stuff like that before they did races. Not cheating, but it's all a bit strange. So anyway, what are your thoughts? Let them know down below. Thanks for watching. Next video coming up is a technical one about headphones. Bye now. Ride on.